everyone, welcome to this Draw With Me. I'm going to share with you the process of this Tanuki tea shop I saw at Namba, Osaka. It was built in the Showa era back in 1948 and serves all kinds of grilled dishes for only 300 yen each. I am using a Mitsubishi Uni HB pencil to sketch on Arch's 300 GSM hot press cotton watercolor paper. I prefer to use hot press paper, which is smooth paper, over cold press paper, which has a more textured bumpy surface. I just find it easier to control my detailed line work on less textured paper, as there is less distortion to the artwork when I scan it in digitally. Next, I outlined the sketch with a burnt umber colored pencil, also by Mitsubishi. I'm constantly sharpening the pencil to get the finest point possible. I actually go through a whole pencil around every 2 to 3 paintings. I'm always on the lookout for a good outlining colored pencil that can be super sharp while not smudging when erased, and with watercolors. So please share with me your recommendations. I always love talking about art supplies. I could seriously go on forever on that topic. There is a large stone statue of a tanuki, raccoon dog, and the traditional elements of the facade really caught my attention. I considered putting characters on the second floor, but I like the quietness of the piece, a bit of a mystery and magical feeling because of the statue seemingly waiting to just step out. It reminded me of Spirited Away. This piece will be mostly painted in gouache. Usually I will choose to use gouache to paint the building facade, as the saturated and flat colors of gouache really help to give visual weight and substance to the overall composition. However, if the building is really old and is characterized by lots of stains on the walls, then I will choose to use watercolors to better mimic that effect. An example is in my painting of a retro toy shop in Tokyo, which was completely done in watercolors. I'm using a flat brush for the wood detail here and making vertical marks to mimic the natural grain of the wood and the stain of rain washing down over the years. The wall trim here is painted with a warm brown. I stop just before the bottom section, and then I go back in with the faint Naples yellow from below and let the colors bleed together organically. I know traditional gouache can be a little tricky to manipulate as the colors dry differently. Lighter colors will dry darker and darker will dry lighter. This was the case in painting the shadows here. It turned out too light, so I decided to bump it up a notch and make that the mid-tone instead. Sometimes I find myself ending up mixing colors directly on the painting itself. Too much water will also risk reactivating the layer of color underneath, which then changes the color you're going for or can cause streaks. But you'll get the hang of it over time with practice, building up the confidence to make mistakes and the skills to turn it around. I'm drawn to the closed nature of the blinds, creating a layer of obstruction with the slightest gaps and the subtle hint of the grid behind the shoji screen door. That is one of my favorite touches of this painting. It evokes a sense of the interior that is just beyond reach but still feels grounded in reality. The flat perspective brings attention to the facade as a threshold. I like to take artistic liberties sometimes and deviate from in real life colors. For the roof tiles, I'm tinting the base color of gray with hints of turquoise and quinacridone gold as a way to express the material interacting with sunlight and oxidizing over time. All these little design choices are a way of world building the environment I want my artwork in. I'm deliberately making non-uniform marks for the blinds here. Although I'm generally a detailed artist, I like the look of looser details and imperfection too. It feels more true to life that way. I'm painting a feeling and not a photograph. Notice that I'm applying pressure with heavy light. I like to vary my line work so that the overall feeling of my piece feels more natural and deliberate. I'm able to express hierarchy in what is important or what is in the foreground or background through my line work. I chose not to render the ground because I wanted to emphasize the facade and keep it clear as a box instead of grounding it with a dark floor color. I didn't want a dark floor to visually compete with the geometry of the door. Adding in a bit of shadow details here to emphasize the dipped curve of the roof tiles. Usually I will render plants last, and gouache is thick and opaque enough to cover the line work under it. I hope you enjoyed this draw with me, and I would love to hear your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Thanks for spending time with me.